Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another Application Packaging Experts Roundtable. Let's get into it. Before we start, I wanted to highlight that we will be attending the App Manage event this year in the Netherlands. It's back on after being off last year. This is a really good event. We actually always try to plan a release around this time so we can bring some news. And I always have two sessions. One is always about what's new and what's coming with Admin Studio, and then the other one I try to make more broadly appealing, more generic a topic on packaging or packaging process. I've done like using Scrum for package process. I think the next year I did like speeding your application process with some alternative approaches to different steps in the process. And I haven't nailed down a topic for this year. So if you have an idea or a suggestion, you could help me out and feed me some hints of what you might like to hear about. This is a really great event. It's going to be in November. Be the first time I think a lot of us have traveled in a long time, which is something extra to look forward to. And if for some reason, we still haven't gotten to a place where it is generally okay to travel, then there is a fallback date, I think, in April that it would roll back to. So either way, we'll be there and we're looking forward to it. Hope you can make it too. Little housekeeping. Everyone's muted. We have a chat window where you can ask questions. I think it's actually called Q&A. So you can ask questions in there, and we really would appreciate your questions. We did, as always, bring a topic, but we'd really like to drive the conversation in a specific direction that you care to take it. And then for video of the event, as always, we'll be posting a video following the event. So if you have to leave or your friend couldn't make it, we've got you covered there too. So the topic today is going to be Configuration Manager or SCCM and packaging for that, kind of about the package model, the application module. And we brought in, you'll see an extra face here on the list of speakers. We got a outside expert to come join us. I'm really happy about. But I guess before we kick off, we'll just do a quick run through of introductions. My name is Bob Kelly. I run product management for Flexera's IT operations products, including our vulnerability management solutions and Admin Studio. Been in the space a long time, love this topic, and love these opportunities to talk to you about it. Kieran, why don't you go next?
Sure. I'm Kieran Muntke. I'm product manager for Admin Studio and SVM. I'm in Bob's team. Been with Admin Studio, packaging domain, and Flexera close to a decade now. Happy to be here. Mike?
Yeah. Mike O'Connor, a senior solutions engineer as it shows. I've been covering Admin Studio for 14 years now. So been in the space for quite a while, and happy to be here today. Thanks.
My name is Sonny Lee. I'm one of the account managers for Admin Studio. Not as experienced as these guys, but very happy and excited to be here.
Hey guys, my name is Sumit Singh. I'm one of the lead, endpoint management engineer with a retail company here, and I'm really, happy and glad to be in this panel. We have an exciting panel, and I'm really looking forward for this discussion. So, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Really cool. We're actually gonna try to make something out of this and have a regular speaker in the future, because we haven't even started yet, and I already know it's a great idea. So thanks for coming. We do have a very experienced panel. We can talk about anything, but pretty cool to have access to to everybody at once in a forum where we're soliciting questions. So please take advantage of that. And with that, I'll pass it off to Kieran to lead us in this conversation. I agreed that the configuration manager packaging was a good topic, but it is no longer my expertise. I've been with packaging long enough that it was SMS 1.2 that I would be considered more of an expert on. And I don't remember much except that you had to follow a lot of services, and you had to watch files move from directory to directory as they tried to, scale such a big solution with, pretty primitive technology, really. But it was good times. It's been fun watching it evolve. And obviously I still have my hands in it, but this is much more Kieran and Sumit's area of expertise. So I'm going to let you guys drive this, and I believe we'll start off with some poll questions.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. So starting from SMS 1.2 till today, it's been a great journey that SCCM has gone through. When you look at it today, the kind of functionalities and features are really amazing and makes the life of IT administrators really, really easy, for not just with respect to deploying softwares, but way, way beyond that. So before we get into the poll question, I thought I'll set some context for this discussion and why we thought this could be a really interesting topic for all of us. Generally, what happens when we go on many of our customer meetings or a lot of customer calls or discussions, we have seen many common questions, but one among them is, hey, what do you think is the right way of deploying a software, or how do I create a package in Admin Studio before I could publish it to Configuration Manager? And that question generally leads into the discussion of understanding the package model and application model. And what we have generally seen is, there are a lot of customers who have a pretty good understanding of these two models, but at the same time, we have also seen that there is a huge amount of confusion as to, hey, which one to pick. So we thought this could be a really great topic because that confusion could exist among many others, and we thought we'll pick that as a topic for this and see how it goes. So any questions you might have around, you can always use Q&A section here, and we'll try to answer as many questions we can during the session. So with that, let's get into the poll questions. So I've got some really simple poll questions for you. I think this is going to set a really good tone for our discussions, for this discussion. So let me start with the first question. The question is, which endpoint management system do you use in your organization today? Starts with Microsoft Configuration Manager. You must be knowing that it has been renamed. Earlier, it was called SCCM, or System Center Configuration Manager. So it's pretty much the same. And then there is Microsoft Intune, VMware Workspace ONE, Alteryx, Tanium, BigFix, or others. You have option to choose multiple. We know that in few cases, some of you guys might be migrating. What I've seen recently is people are migrating from Config Manager to Intune, or let's say they're trying to have co-managed system or something like that. So if you're in the process of migration, you can always choose two, whichever you using in your organization today. We'll maybe give it a few seconds, and then we'll go to the next slide, and we'll see how the poll results look like.
And these were the big names that I think made sense for a poll, but there's obviously, the other could be quite a few. It really depends on the size of the organization. There's the product that I actually last worked on before coming to Flexera was the Case Systems Management Appliance. And that, it did a lot of the same things that Configuration Manager does, but like others in its space, it's focused more on the mid-market. So the idea being, Configuration Manager is very powerful and very capable, and it makes our lives easy, but only if you really invest a lot of time in understanding it and getting trained on it and caring and feeding it. And, that really is the type of thing that is more suitable for a very large organization versus those like maybe under under 5,000 or so. So let's see what we got.
Time for sure. Perfect. This is great. So I think this was expected. We see a bigger percentage of our audience using Configuration Manager, and then there is Intune. I think that is slowly picking up really well. It is getting a lot of attention these days. And then there is Workspace ONE, Alteryx, Tanium, BigFix, others. This is really interesting. Thank you.
If anybody wouldn't mind if you answered other, it'd be great if you just used the Q&A to let us know what other. That wasn't really an option on the poll here and what it got to in the weeds, but it's very interesting for us to know in terms of things we should be supporting or watching out for.
Great. So let me go to the next question. So this is about the type of package that you use for deployment. It could be the vendor supplied MSI. You got MSI from your vendor and you use it as is. Maybe you use the command line, or you have an exe which doesn't have command line, and then you repackage it to MSI or vendor supplied exe where it has got some good command line support. Or you wrap using the partial app deploy toolkit. That's what it is. And the new package format from Microsoft, MSIX, or you use script installer, which is more like a legacy way of doing. You wrap your installer within a batch file or a VB script or any other scripts that you might use, and virtual format like AppV. I think that is the one which has got more attention compared to other virtual formats like Citrix or ThinApp. We'll give maybe 10 seconds, and then we'll look at the poll results for this one.
And this is another one where you can check more than one because you almost certainly use more than one.
Oh, yeah, right, true. Depending on either the system or the user, you might want to pick a different package type for deployment for the same product or for the same application.
All right, I'm excited to see.
All right, let's go. All right, beautiful. So MSI is still the highest, which is great. People love MSI. I know it's easy to deploy. It has got standard command lines. You don't really have to scratch your head for deployment, so that's not surprising. And then there is repackaged MSI, vendor supplied exe, partial app deploy toolkit, MSIX. Oh, it's interesting to see 21% of them using MSIX. I'll be really curious to know if you have completely migrated to MSIX, or you are still in the process of your initial testing or piloting to see how this deployment looks. I'll be really interested if you can put some comments in the Q&A and say, hey, no, we are not using it in the production and it's mostly in the testing phase. Or in case you have, you could also let us know that, no, we have started using it in the production. We get to hear this even a lot from our customers. Is MSIX ready for production? We get into these discussions a lot. But this is really interesting poll result.
I see another interesting observation to point out is I would have expected that PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit was more prevalent given the conversations I've had with customers, and scripted installer was selected more. So that right. Indicates to me that people are continuing to use whatever they have used. I think Wise, we supported Wise script wrapping in Admin Studio as a feature because we encountered so many people that still used it. It's one of those, if it works, don't fix it type of positions a lot of people have. Something to add, Mike?
Mike?
I was going to say, I think this reflects, when I talk to customers, it shifted from a lot of enterprises trying to repackage what wasn't already a vendor MSI into one, right? And be consistent that way, to more of the, well, let's start with what the vendors provided me, and then what can I do with that as much as possible? And that's where we've heard a lot of customers switching more to, if it's MSI, great, we'll work with that. If it's an EXE that's got switches, as is, or maybe with the PowerShell or another wrapper can work. And then if all else, right, repackaging's gone down to there's no way to run this silently, right, from the vendor. So I have to go down that road, is what I'm hearing a lot. But I know some of the other enterprises, to Bob's point, if it isn't broken, let's not fix it. And they've been consistently repackaging to MSI, if not already. So it works for them. So,
there's no wrong way, right? I mean, you can,
right.
But like we'll be talking about with the package model versus application model, it's a good idea to review your decision not to change and make sure things haven't evolved to the point where you're really missing out. Because one thing with the PowerShell deploy toolkit is pretty compelling, and it's gotten a lot of adoption. So if you have your own script and it's doing a couple of things, you might consider moving that functionality into a PowerShell deploy toolkit template so that you can take advantage of the built-in capabilities that the community's been providing. And we're actually going to dig into PowerShell deploy toolkit as a topic in a future session.
One other thing I was curious, Bob and Kiran, to see, are people talking about batch wrapper as well? I mean, no. I mean, are we using batch still? It's something I would like to interested to know. Are we using any batch wrappers?
Yeah, I used to use a batch all the time just because I wanted a consistent, install.bat. That way, everybody just knew that's what you run. But in that batch script, it was usually just the silent command line and maybe, like an output log or something very simple. It wasn't really a proper wrapper where I think, it's doing checks, it's maybe prompting or handling certain cases, pre and post installation. I have seen batch scripts that were pretty involved. And, it could further be why somebody would say, I'm sticking with it because we've created something great and it does exactly what we need.
Yeah, 100% with you. I mean, like you said, I've seen as well with that where it's very compelling. So, yeah.
Right. Let's go to our last question in the poll. So this whole discussion is based on this topic: package model and application model in Configuration Manager. So the question is, which model do you use today for deployments? So
this time we're making them choose, right? Yeah. So right. You can't pick both this time. And you may very well use both, right? Like that is certainly a possibility. So if you do use both, pick the one that you use, most of the time or the majority of the time. And then we'll go into a discussion around, this package versus application model rather for a bit. Our goal isn't for this to be the only thing we talk about. So, if you have questions about this or comments about this topic, please do add them. But if you have others, now is also a good time to start feeding the Q&A system so that when we wrap up on this topic and go to just open Q&A, we can take it in whatever direction. All right, let's see, Karen.
Yep. I think that that is kind of expected. Application model is the new model. It's modern, and I'm seeing that Microsoft kind of encourages all their customers to use the application model for all the benefit it offers. And there is also a good migration path within Configuration Manager where you could take your package and then convert it to an application. So considering that fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see that application model is more used than the package model. But these are really interesting numbers. So this will set a really good tone for our next discussion. And thank you, everybody, for taking these questions. Now let's get into the actual topic for this roundtable, where we discuss about packages and applications in Configuration Manager. Now, the idea here, like what we're discussing on the poll question with respect to what is the type of package that you use, the idea here is, hey, it's not about this is the best or that is the best one. It's about what fits your requirements. So we'll look at what are the various things that are available or supported for each of the models, and then one would be better suited for one of your use cases, while the other could be better suited for your other use cases. So if you look at how these two models are different, here is the quick comparison. To start with, package model is pretty legacy. If some of you have worked on the older version of Configuration Manager back in the day when it was called SCCM 2007, I think that is where the package model started. And application model was introduced in SCCM 2012, right? Now, package model is primarily, or at this point, it is better suited if you have some simple deployments to make, or let's say you want to run some scripts on a machine, or if you want to update some registry keys or policies or something like that. It doesn't mean that you cannot deploy softwares. You can still take a MSI or an EXE, wrap it in a batch file, and then send it, or you could directly invoke MSI along with its command line, and then you could still do it. But it is just about, this is better suited for something there where the deployment is really simple and you want maybe in a recurring fashion. Now, while I was thinking about this, I had this example that came to my mind. In my previous organization about 10 years ago, I remember it very clearly. One of the IT team members would come to each of the computers, each of the desks, and they would ask us that they would want to log into a computer. They would log into a computer with admin credentials, and they used to run a script. That happened very frequently, maybe once in a quarter or something. And the output of that script was generally a CSV file. At that point, I didn't really understand what was he trying to do, but later I got to know what they were trying to do is pull up inventory from my system. So they were running a script to get the inventory, and that came out as a CSV, and that they would do it on all the computers and eventually get the inventory of the software. So if you have something like this, a script that you want to run on a regular schedule, I think package model is best suited for it. Now, application model is evolved. When I read about the application models, some places it says it's package model on steroids. So it gives you greater control, greater flexibility with respect to how you deploy softwares. Now, when we get into details of this application model, it offers you various properties that you could set on an application that could help you target devices. So if you get into some details, one of the really interesting feature that application model has is deduction methods. Now, what deduction method does is it goes and checks if the software that you're trying to deploy or you're trying to install on a device, if the software is already installed. And you can have various criteria as to how do you write a deduction method within Configuration Manager. Either you could use files or registry, or you could write your own custom script to check if this software that you're deploying is already installed. You could look for a specific registry key, or you could look for a primary file. And if you install Google Chrome, you'll find chrome.exe in program file somewhere. So you could target files like those, and then eventually evaluate, this package is already installed, so I don't want to run it again. So deduction methods. And then there are requirements which will help you target your devices. A good example could be, let's say you have a 32-bit application or a package, and you want to make sure you install it only on 32-bit systems, and you have a 64-bit version for the same product, and you want to install that one on a 64-bit machine. Now, when you're doing this, now you create what is called as deployment types under an application, and you can set the requirements for each deployment type. You can say, hey, the 32-bit package should be installed only on 32-bit operating systems. So you could set such requirements using the requirements in application model. And for 64-bit, you could say, I want this to be installed only on 64-bit. So when you do this and when you send the package over for deployment, SCCM will take care of it. So what we are trying to say here is applications have got intelligence, they have got logic, and before installing, they evaluate a lot of factors, a lot of criteria on your machine, on the end device, and only if that application is applicable, it would install. So imagine the kind of control that an IT administrator or many of you who might be IT administrators today might have the kind of control that you would have when you make a deployment. So that is the biggest benefit that I see when you look at package model and application model specifically.
Kieran, it sounds like a lot of the types of things that you might put in a wrapper script. So it almost sounds like using the application model may greatly reduce the need for a wrapper at all.
Very good question, and that's right. Just imagine, you write 100 lines of script or even more. Like, you want to handle your post-install, pre-install, and all of that. And you generally do it in script. For example, you have an application and you want to check, and it has dependency on .NET Framework. Now, you might want to write it in your script. Hey, check if .NET Framework is installed. If yes, only then install this. All of that can be handled in Configuration Manager with a click of button. So here you could also add dependency, which is another great feature of application model, where you could say the application that I'm trying to deploy has got these dependencies, generally like .NET Framework or Java, which are considered to be like the dependent applications. You could add all of those to your application, and when the deployment happens, the dependent application will be installed first, and then the main application. So SSEM even takes care of all those criteria. And one other really powerful feature that I have seen with the application model is supersedence. I think that also reduces a great deal of work for IT administrators. So supersedence basically tries to address two use cases. One is upgrade, and the other one is replace. Now, you have one version of a package. Now, you want to roll out a new version across your organization, supersedence is the best place. You could say, hey, if you find this version on this computer, on the devices, uninstall and then install the new one. So that is an upgrade scenario. A replace would be, if I take an example, let's say I was using WinZip as a zip utility or a compressor utility. Now I want to move to 7-zip, right? Now I want to replace WinZip with 7-zip. So that is a replace use case that supersedence you could achieve using supersedence. So these are some of the features that are available on application model, and these makes the model super powerful and helps you reduce a lot of your manual work, which you would have done otherwise, either by writing script or something like that.
Hey, Sumit, what's your thoughts on package versus application? What do you see in your previous deployments?
Yeah, and thank you, Kiran. That was really good. And basically what I was thinking, and I'm going to add some kind of practical kind of use cases with this, because I think Kiran really gave a kind of a really descriptive difference between packages and application model. Like what I've seen in our side of it, based on my experience of working with application and packages, is that mostly in case of like, the drivers or the OSD, like when we say operating system deployment, there are subcomponents where we use packages. Like that's one of the use cases I've seen. And I think most of the folks who comes from that side of it, operating system deployment, they would kind of relate to this, that drivers, like USMT stuffs, where we say user data migration stuffs, we probably use packages there. It's easier in that way to handle. A couple of other scenarios I can think of where we use packages is, let's talk about a use case where you want to kind of clean up some, like a faulty corrupted file on a regular basis, like a scheduled task. And that's one of the use cases I came across where in our environment, the group policy was not kind of, the files were getting corrupted on the client system. So we had a kind of scheduled package deployed wherein every day, time it's going to run and clean up those files. The other thing I came across, another example I can give was we are a retail company, and we have had this promotions or discounts going through in our environment. And see, one of the case where it came is like our promotions files were not flowing the way we wanted to, and we wanted to do certain, like command or something run on a regular basis on a specific time. That's another scenario where we use packages, because we want to run that application or that package every time, the script or whatever command. So that's another use case about packages. The reason why people love packages is, and they want to stick to that, it is easier to manage. They don't have to hunt and go and find out the detection methods. But at the same time, I feel that detection could be anything. You don't really have to digging too much. Like, let's say Kiran gave a very good example about Chrome application, right? You can literally go and use chrome.exe, just use the version of it and see, if this version is installed, that means this application is present on this endpoint. And so I think one of the things why people kind of hesitate to use application is they see that as a more effort, that they need to go do some research, find out the detection method so that they can add it in the application. But they could use anything, like I think we discussed before in this call, was that we can use file, registry, or MSI. It's easier. You can use product code, but so that's about packages. There are a couple of other things which I can talk about packages. Was packages, the deployment status report for packages are not that great. I mean, if you're looking at from the admin side and you're troubleshooting a deployment, perspective, I mean, packages gives you a little less descriptive, or it just tells you whether it's failed or success. It doesn't give you more kind of information what exactly failed, right? But when it comes to application, we have more detailed information what failed, and probably some description for the reason of failure. So I think that's really helpful, especially when it comes to a major, when you're trying to roll out a major application or a critical business application in your environment. One good thing about packages is that you can run it from distribution point itself. Like, you don't have to really cache it on the client system and run it from there, which is the case for application, right? And this is kind of best suited if you have a Citrix kind of environment, like where you're preferably you prefer packages in that side, because Citrix is basically, it's like a multi-shared environment, right? So that's another case I can talk about.
I was going to add just real quick, the slide that they have up, just a quick correction. So for the application model, you can do device and user deployments, where a package is only for device deployments. Do I have that right?
Sorry. Go ahead, Sumit.
Oh, sorry, I'm not able to get my unmute button. I was saying that it can be used via, generally for application, they say it's user basis. User-based deployment preferably, because you have a lot of settings which you can configure for user to target users. Packages are more on devices to deploy for devices, but both can be interchangeably used. We use even application for devices or packages for users. So I think there's no fast rule that only this can be used for this. So it's interchangeably can be used. Yeah.
So that is precisely the reason why I said it is recommended. It doesn't mean that I can't use package for user deployment. I can. And it doesn't mean that I can't use applications for device deployment. I'll give you an example for to say how applications are best suited for user deployment. This is primarily based on the kind of settings that are available on application. For example, so when we talk about requirements, there are types of requirements. One is called device requirement. One is called custom, where you could create your own requirement. And there is one requirement called user requirement, right? So you don't have these kind of, so here you could say, you could set a requirement that I want this to be installed only on a primary device of this user, right? And there are also certain other settings under user experience as to should the user be logged in or all of that. So all of this kind of makes it makes application model more preferred or more suited for user deployments, but I can still deploy applications to devices. The deployment status, I think Sumit already covered. I totally agree on every point that Sumit covered on various use cases and contexts where he prefers to use package model. I think that is great, and that really comes from his experience of working on Configuration Manager for several years. And one really nice feature with respect to applications is the icons. There is no icon property supported for package model. Now, how does that help you, right? It helps the end user more than the IT administrator himself. So when a software is deployed or when a package is deployed, or interchangeable, when an application is deployed on an endpoint, it would appear either on Software Center or it would appear on Application Catalog, depending on how you have set it. You would have set it in a way where it appears only on Application Catalog, or you would have set it in a way where it goes into Software Center, which is a client software which is installed on the end device. So this is the place where you generally see, hey, what are the applications that are coming from SCCM? What is its installation status and all of that? So when an application comes and appears in Application Catalog or in Software Center, it will be really easy for an user to identify an application when it has an icon. We can easily identify when we see Chrome in the App Store. Let's say in my mobile, I'm searching for Chrome. Let's say there are two apps with the name Chrome, and one has got the regular icon that we see, and the other one is something else. So I know this is the one I'm looking at, right? So icons that way give a very great experience, a simple and easy experience to identify an application. That looks like a small thing, but it really helps the end users in identifying the right application while they pick an application for installation. Next difference that I've seen is with respect to application approval. This is also slightly related to how you deploy an application. This feature is not applicable in package model today. So when you deploy an application, you could actually set it in a way where you can say, if a user wants this application, he has to request for it, like your end user, right? So it has, when you deploy it, you have to set it as available and not required. So you set it and then you push it to your end devices. It will start appearing in the application catalog. Now, a user can go to his application catalog, which is the client side of SCCM. It's a web-based. So the difference between application catalog and Software Center is a desktop product installed. It's a client software installed on the device, while application catalog is web-based. There are a couple of other differences, but I think for now, we'll try to keep it simple. So when an application is deployed in such a way where it says that an approval request is needed for installation, it will appear in application catalog. And from your application catalog, you could actually go and say, I want to install this, right? Then the request will automatically go to SCCM, and the admin could go and approve or deny the request. And based on that, you will be either able to install or not install or request again, right? So there is a good workflow that would come along with this process. And this will help you keep your licenses on check. That is the use case maybe you want to target when you want to set up this process of application approval. So that will come in, this process will come in really handy if you don't really have a, like a really big enterprise product for managing your applications like Flexera's ITAM products, right? So you could, as the simplest process, you could at least take this first step. Now, some other things that you could find different between package and application model is the variety of packages that, or the variety of setup types or the installers that the application model supports out of the box. It ranges from MSI to EXEs do virtual apps and all of that, which is, of course, I can do it still in package. But some of the things which you may not be able to do in package is mobile apps. So you'll be able to create mobile apps. So there are two types of mobile apps. One is you have the binary, or you could even use a deep link where it directly connects to store and then pulls the application down on the device, right? So SCCM or the application model supports mobile apps. You could either supply a binary file like IPA for iOS and the other one for Google, APK, APK for Android. And you could also provide the store links. And at the same time, you could also provide Microsoft store links, right? And also it supports Mac. There's a little catch with the Mac packages. It doesn't directly support the native packages like PKG or DMG. They have got their own setup. I think they call it as CMMac, .cmmac, and they've got a utility. So you have to get a CM app utility from SCCM. It's available in the client. You take your Mac native packages and then convert them into CMMac. If somebody has any experience on Intune, a good analogy for this would be you take MSI EXEs and then convert to Intune Win package formats, which is the Win 32-bit format for supporting on Intune, something like that, right? So that way it supports Mac and also web applications where you could publish a web link to your end users. One other great point I think that will really help IT administrators to take an application right from the point it is released by the vendor till the time it goes into end of life is that you can. So let's say in a process where when there is a new version available, you create an application in SCCM, or you could use products like Admin Studio, which saves you a bunch of time to publish an application into SCCM where you would have rather spent a lot of time, like what Sumit was saying, right? It's really complex to create an application in SCCM. So that job is really made easy in Admin Studio when you publish it from Admin Studio. Anyway, no matter how you create an application, so you create an application of certain version, and then there is a new version available, you upgrade, and after a certain number of years, the first version goes end of life. So this is generally a short form of a application lifecycle. Now, the application model helps you manage an application through its entire lifecycle. You could start from the creation where you deploy, upgrade, and it gives you a great functionality of retiring it, which is not available in package. So it kind of helps you take that application through entire life cycle, and you don't really have to think of, hey, this has got end of life now. How do I take this application out of my devices? So all of these will be achieved using the retire functionality. Now, these are some major differences. If you get into details, there are really many, but we are thinking these are where the major use cases will be addressed, and this should give you good clarity on, hey, now I think this is the right thing for me to use the other one. But other than that, there are also certain features like, phased deployment. Phased deployment is not possible in packages. It's possible only in applications where you could set your deployments in phases. You could say, I'm making the first round of deployment for pilot systems, and I want to trigger an automatic deployment as a second deployment to my bigger ring, or it could be the production ring. And you can set certain criteria as to, okay, when I deploy my first to pilot, these are the criteria it should meet. Let's say the deployment is successful on 95% of the machines. If yes, then trigger the second ring, something like that. So this is phased deployment in Configuration Manager, and this is not supported by package model, but you can definitely use applications to take benefit of phased deployments. And one other nice thing is about user categories. Applications have got a way to categorize. This is once again more beneficial for the end users. We talked about application catalog. We talked about software center, where the end user would see the applications. Now, imagine it's a huge app store, and you're finding it really difficult to search for the right type of application that you want to install or request. Now, user categories will really help to categorize the applications. For example, something like email clients could be one set of category, and productivity tools could be one set of category, and your administrator can take a decision as to which application he wants to categorize into which user category. So what I'm trying to say is the list, what we are saying is not the final list. This is just some of the differences, but when you get into the details, or if you get into more advanced or more detailed use cases, you could actually find a lot of other differences. But these should really help you take a good decision as to which model will suit you the best for your deployments. So, Sumit, I would really love to hear if you have any experience from your where you either switch to a wrong side and you've seen some really bad results or bad consequences.
No, not really. I mean, in our side of it, I think I would say probably we are 95% applications, because we really like that. That's the modern way Microsoft recommends. And like you covered all those points, handy points, what you talked about, features. We want to leverage all those. We are getting into, the modern side of it on our application. So we want to make sure that we use the latest and greatest, and that the kind of control we gave, the kind of new features we talked about, the phase deployment, which is the one which we use for our mass rollouts. It's really handy. Like, you don't have to do anything. Just say, okay, if it's 95%, go ahead and push out the remaining, endpoints. So quite a cool features there, and we are trying to use more and more of it. There are some cases, like I talked about, like operating system, that side of it, or there are some repetitive cases where we need to use packages, but mostly we are into application which we use it. And already you listed out all those great reasons why we want to prefer that, and also mobile stuff and modern side of it, of application management. So yeah, that's where we are heading to. I mean, I think it's going to be a place where we really can't do 100%. Like, apps, maybe in future you might, but I think right now it's where we were trying to use most of them. Like I said, 95% of the time you're using applications, and then probably 5% of our apps stack is on packages. So that's where we are today.
Great. Mike, you've got anything from customers that around these models, or the kind of questions that you hear from them?
I think a lot of it was covered. It's just, where's the complexity of the install, right? Is it built in the package, or do you kind of break that out and put it in the deployment system? And as it was said, I've geared more people that they're still kind of use the package model more, just because they're kind of used to it. It works. But it seems to be a lot more effort to making sure that installer does exactly and takes all the different situations into account, where with the application model, you can let the deployment system config manager be more intelligent of, well, if it's already got that dependency, then I don't need to redeploy it. Or if this application itself doesn't meet the requirements, or if it's already installed, I can skip that. So it's taking the complexity out that had to be built in every use case and had to deploy to every machine, whether it met the criteria or not. Taking all that complexity and that kind of, deployments that really shouldn't have ever occurred, really, because it didn't meet it, taking all that out and letting config manager do that decision. And then it's just a matter of if it meets everything and we're all good, install the MSI. It's a lot more information that you have to supply config manager, but as you mentioned, tools like Admin Studio especially make it a lot easier to, I can do it in 4 clicks, publish one or many applications to config manager from Admin Studio, versus it's literally like 12 to 15 mouse clicks for a single app in config manager. It gets you the same spot, but if you could do it faster and do it a lot more applications, why not? So.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed, a lot of it is not like a fixed rule. These are certain number of requirements I always want to add, or these are certain number of supersedence I always want to add. A lot of it also depends on the package. Now, let's say you have a package which automatically identifies the previous version and upgrades. Then then you don't want to add supersedence, right? So it is a decision that you want to take for each package. And there are certain packages where they could exist side by side. I can have one version and the next version available at the same time on the machine. So during this time where maybe you want to take advantage of supersedence and deal with the previous version using supersedence. So, and also with respect to dependencies, some of the packages have the dependent packages inbuilt and some don't. So I think what I'm trying to say is it is also package dependent. You don't have to blindly use all the great features of application model. If your application is built in a certain way, you might want to drop certain things. And that is where I think also Admin Studio will help you to figure out how is this application built or how is this package built. I think that gives you a great insights when you import a package in the catalog.
So to kind of sum it up then, just like when you're deciding how am I going to package this application, you've also got a decision to make. How do I want to deploy this application? You've got options, and one size never fits all. We're down to about 10 minutes. I think that was a good conversation. There are some questions around this, but we actually got a pretty good amount of feedback and questions. Thank you very much for the participation. I'm sure we won't get to everything, so this is my quick plug for the community. If we don't answer your question, you can always take it to the community at any time, and we'd be happy to engage with you there. And then we'll also be looking at your responses and questions as a whole to help guide future sessions. So very valuable. I guess I'll throw it to the round table. Looking at the questions, is there any question that someone's anxious to make sure we get answered? You want to jump on it?
Yeah, I think the question, as we're discussing about the application model, there's one method called dependency. So while installing, we can install both of the packages as one will add other dependencies. But is there any method to follow during the uninstallation? I mean, is there any way to run both uninstall script by SCCM?
No, once they get deployed, go ahead, Sumit.
Sorry, go ahead, Kiran. You want to take it on? Go ahead.
What I was saying is once these packages go and get installed on the machine, these would be two independent packages. So you can't expect that I uninstall the main package and the dependency package gets uninstalled automatically. You have to deal with that separately.
That's right. And one more thing we need to understand is that just to add to that, dependency it sounds like is a cool thing to use, but I have seen situations where we get into these circular dependencies, and that creates a headache. I got into a trouble last month with this. So when you're trying to run through it, make sure that you do a throw testing, make sure that you run all the scenarios in your environment, make sure that you test it out and then use it. So just wanted to call that out. So be mindful of circular dependency where probably one application is used multiple times, probably in a chain fashion, and that's going to be a headache to troubleshoot. And unfortunately, even Microsoft doesn't have a logging enabled that well to track it and see what's kind of triggering. So you have to be careful with that. I just wanted to call that out. Thank you, Kiran, for that.
Sure. There is this interesting question. Is there any size limitation with MSI? Like MATLAB 2019 is around 50 to 60 gigs after installation. And the question is, can we package it with MSIX for WVD? There is a limitation for file size for MSI. I think the maximum size is 2 gigs for MSI. But I think you can have, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, for a single compressed installer, you can have bigger, but the cab files that it uses for the compressing the payload is limited to 2 gigs. And they may have missed the X because then they mentioned about MSIX. I think MSIX has a size limitation as well, does it not? Yes,
I think, but I don't have it on top of my my head now. Maybe we can get to that. But yes, MSIX also has a size limitation. and you're also talking about WVD. Let's say your point is you want to use MSIX and WVD in conjunction with Intune. Then there is also a size limitation that comes from Intune. I think the maximum size in Intune for a package is 8 gigs. That's what I've seen. So yeah, if it's 50, 60, and if you're planning to put all of that into a single package, it might not work.
When I was packing big packages like that, I would always try to install it to like a UNC path or a map drive, and that way that majority of the files, it's probably just data, is on the network and not on all your endpoints. But that may or may not work depending on the environment.
I did see a Microsoft forum. They said Microsoft, one of the MSIX team said they're just delivering a game through the Microsoft Store in excess of 100 gigs through MSIX. So definitely supports larger sizes than MSI for sure.
That's good to know. Thank you, Mike. And just to add to that, one of the things which, based on my experience I'm seeing is that, in enterprise, somehow we see that even if the application is used by a single user or 2 users, we try to repackage. Generally, we follow a practice here, especially in our end, that, if it's not used by 10 users, we don't spend time to, script it and package it and push it out. Because let's say 1 or 2 users are using it. It doesn't make any sense to kind of wrap it and spend all those time just for a couple of users, right? So we have a rule defined in our organization wherein only if a software is needed by 10 or more users, we are going to do all this process and go ahead and do it. So just to add to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good tip.
There is this one question which has 4 questions within. Is it intended that after filling the app deploy toolkit, it can be signed? I'm reading it as after I wrap a package into the partial script, is it necessary to be signed? That's how I'm reading it. Or is it mandatory to be signed? No, it's not. But in case you have, or an organization has a process of signing every package that they want to deploy, they could, but it is not mandatory that it has to be signed. No.
Because that can be a policy for even executing a script, right? The PowerShell execution policy may require it be signed.
Good
you
point,
certainly
yes.
can sign it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Right. That's a good point, Mike. Bob, it is also depend on how your PowerShell is set up on the device. If the execution policy is set up to accept only signed scripts, then in that case, you have to sign the installer packages. But if it is set to like unrestricted, you can easily not sign and still install the package or run the script. Sumit,
Right. And just to add to that, Kiran and Bob, I think most of the company, because of security reasons, they generally do that signed execution of signed script. So probably most of the company I've come across, I think they do that because of security reasons. So, yeah.
And that's built into MSIX, right? MSIX has to be signed for it to be run in the environment. It's going that way.
Maybe we can take one last question because I like this question. That's why. From which version of Admin Studio can I distribute Intune Win file format to Intune? Bob, you want to take that question? I love that question. Next version.
September release.
Right.
We're planning a release in September that has a number of updates and enhancements, and we're actually investing quite a bit in our Intune support. And so at that point, you'll be able to publish Intune Win directly from Admin Studio. Today, we can help you wrap it, but we don't actually do the push of that type. If it's MSI, MSIX, we can push it, but we don't push the Intune Win from Admin Studio at this time. But team's working on it right now. And with that, the intended topic for next time is PowerShell Deploy Toolkit. I hope to have the creators of the PowerShell App Deploy Toolkit join us to talk about it. So if you are a fan or user of that, I think that's one you won't want to miss. And like I said, I know we didn't get to a lot, so we'll try to address them offline. And if you want to elaborate, come up with another question along the way, we're all watching the community all the time and happy to answer there. Thank you to Sumit for joining us, and to the rest of the team, and to you for joining. See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.